Hey.
Ciao.
Hey.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oops, sorry. There we go.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Ciao, ciao, everyone.
Ciao. Hi.
Good afternoon to you.
Good to see you all.
How are you?
Virtually, but you know.
Yeah. We'll manage to do it in physical, so
Yeah.
fingers. Yeah. Wow. Who has kids around?
Yeah, there's I'm at a friend's office, so that's I don't know if I can show her daughter. Laurent, je peux montrer ta fille en public? That's Ellie.
Wow, you're the real boss.
Yeah, definitely.
That's Laurent.
Actually, are like,
Ciao, ciao, Laurent.
Hi. In reality.
Yeah.
Like that we know that.
We'll
yeah,
upstairs. Good. So thank you guys for joining us. Today we have the 6th appointment of Life of the Others from FakeAuthentic. And we have the pleasure to host nice triptych between Italy, Ireland, and Swiss, Portugal. So we are very welcome to DENARA studio, who will talk as the first, and ANTIPAS Jones as second. Welcome, guys. And then Daniel ZAMARBIDE from Bureau. So you are going to be the third. Thank you very much, guys, for your time, and
sure.
We look forward to listen to you. We begin with you guys, Italian smiling faces. So very, very welcome. We briefly introduce your work. So the studio, it's named DENARA, and it's about Niccolò Calandrini and Francesco Rambelli. They are practicing architects, and they are moving in between kind of architecture, design, and folklore. I like very much your description of yourself. They come from Ravenna, and they established their office quite recently, so in 2020. They are very much dealing with several ranges of architecture. We recommend you strongly to go and check their new installation named Selva, which is kind of a built forest, and is Fondazione Casa Origani in Ravenna. They will be part of our physical exhibition that we will host in September in the gallery of Antonia Iannone. And I mean, we found them extremely, extremely sharp and ironic, I would say. So we welcome you very much, and we look forward to listen to you. So it's on you guys, and thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I could share screen, I guess.
Yes, I should allow you. Sorry, I always forget to do it. There you go.
Okay, so can you see all the presentation, I guess? Cool, perfect. So thank you for the introduction. It was really precise. And I'm Francesco, he's Niccolò, and as Luca said, we are we have the practice, and we are living here in Ravenna, and we are going to show you today the presentation about the words that somehow we have reflected on in the last weeks, and we find it extremely interesting. So in doing that, we're gonna propose you our reflection using Word as a design strategy, as a design material, because for our project, Posa Cesare, the one we will show in Sonore del Mobile, for us, the title, the word, is part of the project, is a strong part of the concept and the project of it. So we will stress in this in the next slide the importance of word linked to the work of art. So if I can start, I will show you this is the Le Corbusier chair by Jorge Pardo, made in 1994. And why we choose to put it in fake. For us, fake is something that doesn't match with the reality. It is something which is kind of fictional in its characteristic. So in this project by Jorge Pardo, he named it Le Corbusier chair. But as you can see, it reminds the seats of the iconic seat of Le Corbusier, but actually is not the Le Corbusier chair. There is a consciousness in the mind of the artist doing that, because behind the project, a design project like a chair, there is the work of art, the art of doing things. So this chair was in the museum, and if someone had tried to sit on it, the chair probably would have a break. In an ironical way, Jorge Pardo described this relation between the art and the image of the design that somehow is widespread globally by the media. So, and this is actually taking us far from the real image of the object. So this fake is an intentional fake, and without the word Le Corbusier chair, this project maybe wouldn't have been so precise and real, by the way. And another one is one from an Italian TV show which was going live in 2009, and was really cool, really ironic, and we feel that somehow match a lot with our research, because we decided to give authenticity to this object, because authentic is something which actually no one can say it's not. So in this case, the kitchen is not used just as a kitchen film, but is somehow a fermasmorfia, which in English it means stop grimacing, the grimaces of the face. So in this case, the object with the name fermasmorfia, it becomes a new object, a new real object, because no one can say somehow that that's not a fermasmorfia. And we love this approach by this show, just playing with the word and the use of the elements. We actually grew up with these shows, and I guess it's one of the reference that somehow sometimes it comes out. So we were glad to show you this with you.
Then we go to iconic. So what is it iconic? Iconic is something emblematic, which can be a character, a contest, an era, or whatever. But for this reason, we took this frame of this performance of Gino de Dominicis, which was done in 1969. And precisely, we think this is iconic, this frame is iconic because the artist here doesn't just jump or try to imitate a bird, but with the title, only with the title actually, which is Tentativo di Volo, so attempt of flying. Just with the title, you understand the iconicity of the moment. So yes, of course, the pose, but is the title that somehow, so the words that he used to describe the performance, somehow you realize how much is iconic this frame, this moment, and this performance. Indeed, there's something really central in the mankind history, let's say. So, for example, from Icarus to Leonardo machine, Wright brothers, but also Superman in movies, for example, Birdman. So it's really something central in mankind, and the artist here was focused on showing what can be this iconicity of flying. Then we have the ironic. For the ironic, we choose this chair of Bruno Munari, which was done in 1945. It's called the sedia for per visite brevissime, which means chair for a short visit. So actually, without the name, without the title, this chair looks like a wrong one, not well done, because if you stop there, you feel uncomfortable. So just with the title, you understand where is the ironic of this element. Indeed, Bruno Munari didn't change the function of the chair, which is of relax and stop and sit, but he made it completely different with a paradox and create some not new object, but something really ironic and really sharp as a design. So with this, we pass through the object that we are presenting to Salone del Mobile, which is Posa Cesare, which we believe mostly is for sure iconic and ironic instead of fake or authentic, because it's difficult to translate it in another language, but just with the word, you understand what the object is. Indeed, this is a sort of neologism, a game of words in between the iconicity of a bust of Caesar and the ashtray, which is the first part of the word that is posa. So we play with this word and we make understand just with this what the object is, and somehow we elevate also the ashtray as a designing object, and somehow we play with the ironicity that a classical bust for this in this example of Caesar, so the emperor, the great emperor or of Roman Empire, we somehow, yeah, exactly. Somehow we, with this designing object, we also refer to what Vico Magistretti said about the concept design. So it's something that you can explain without without showing it, just with the name. You can also tell the design itself by phone. So you can understand it by phone and you can explain what it is by phone, because of the concept. In this case, the title, the word is so important, is a real building material that is enough to understand the design. And so this was the main presentation with all of the elements.
We're looking forward to show you the Posa Cesare in Milan. And we want to thank you, Luca and Stefania, because it's really great to be here with a lot of talented people in this series of presentation, which luckily it goes on until September. So that's super cool and we won't miss it.
Thank
you guys.
No, it's our pleasure, and we enjoy the freshness of your presentation. So it's really, I mean, if I have to imagine you, I imagine you exactly in this way. So talking about chairs that in fact you cannot sit on that, which is somehow a very beautiful concept when you have a kind of unattended guest. And as well, like you showed us the chair, the fake chair of or authentic chair of Le Corbusier by Pardo. I think that it's also a beautiful manifesto of the tendency of nowadays design. I mean, in fairs and such, you see very often objects, in fact, in which you cannot sit on that. And we want to stress this very much. So in our exhibition, we always asked for things that you can use, chairs that you can sit in that. And I think we think it's very important, this. So thanks a million for underlining that. And I think it was very, very fresh and sharp presentation. So thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
I completely agree. Thank you, guys. Now we will go on with Antipas Jones. Guys, I will shortly introduce you. Antipas Jones is an architecture office based in Dublin, founded in 2017 by Lucy Jones and Christoph Antipas. And their work includes a range of project types from scenography to housing developments. We enjoyed very much how they approach to architecture through lots of marvelous representations that soon becomes built realities with simple and smart details and invention. So guys, you're really interested in what you're going to tell us today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for this nice introduction. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, do you see? Yeah.
Perfectly.
Just.
It's good to talk about our work with firms that aren't Irish, actually, because our context is very much based here. So it'll be interesting to hear what you say.
We maybe a bit longer than the previous.
Don't worry.
DENARA. We just put the timer so you control that. So yeah, we are Antipas Jones. So this is Lucy and Christoph, based in Dublin, as you said, but with some link to Switzerland too. We didn't follow your brief, actually. Sorry about that, for your assignment, even it was very precise and nice. We more used these 4 or 2 couple of words like fake, authentic, iconic, ironic to just go through 3 very basic themes, which is objects, context, and projects. Object is the built object and the architecture artifact. Context is our personal context, let's say, and projects. We just look at a few of our projects through the lens of fake, authentic, iconic, ironic. So we're just gonna go through this project very quickly, just showing one image. It's trying to kind of link them with the theme. First, objects. Objects actually is quite a personal reading of the fake authentic. I kind of linked initially the fake authentic with this old ID and search for truth in architecture or perfection in architecture. And thinking about that, I have to mention two architects that were very important for me to understand that idea of perfection in architecture or truth in architecture, which is Adolf Loos and Livio Bacchini. Adolf Loos is a difficult one for me, or was a difficult one for me as a student, also with his background of rational education, Swiss school. And then you read his text, which have an idea of honesty and simplicity. And then suddenly one day, as most of you or most of architects, we discover that he used what we can call fake columns, or what we would call fake columns or fake beams. And this is it was difficult to process or difficult to understand for me, until I kind of understand that he is being how to say that, authentic is more to being true with the idea you construct, or the idea of the project, or the idea of architecture that you yourself produce. So that was kind of an important moment. And then with Lucy, I think it's always important for us to understand what is the idea of the project, or when we look at other architect work, to understand what is their idea of the projects, to look at the project through that question rather than through a fixed lens. And the other one is Livio Bacchini, which is a bit different in the sense that I was very impressed by his work as a student, and I was also maybe very impressed by the person himself. And what is interesting for that theme is that he has very radical approach to constructing the space, and a very specific position or relation with this search for perfection in architecture, in the sense that he tried to have a complete system. It's a structured system that will define the project. Everything in the project is defined by this system. It's complete. When the project is, let's say, you can almost say solved. Everything, every object, every element has its place. You cannot add something, you cannot take something away without disturbing the whole project. So yeah, these are a bit the two kind of extreme that might frame our thinking, and also frame maybe this discussion.
I suppose what's important also is to understand the context in which you work. Like, we do a lot of small projects very quickly on multiple contexts with different clients, different budgets, and it's very important in order to execute a project that you are happy with to have firstly a clear idea, but then also an iron-cast way in which to execute it, because here building something that represents what you initially intended is actually quite challenging. So you need to be very, very clear, firstly on what you're trying to do, and then secondly on how you're going to do it. So these two references, I think, are a good way to illustrate how we approach this. I'm now going to talk about context.
First, just about
sorry.
Just to talk about iconic, ironic too. it was a bit more difficult for us, I think, to relate to that as architects, and maybe more specifically to this idea of irony. What we can say is that we both studied in a time where iconic architects and iconic projects were dominating the architecture debate, and we kind of witnesses the decline of that, of this model, let's say. But two things maybe out of that. First, these iconic architects projects were important for our construction as architect, and whatever we think about that now, they are very still important for us. They are still part of our references, and more or less we use them all the time, more or less conscientiously. And the second thing is that these iconic projects, they were built, or their aura was really built through or with the use of images, and that was important for us, I think, because in the sense that we had to think about how we use images in our work, or how, as architect, how you use images, because you are confronted with the production of images almost on a daily basis in the architecture office. And that comes maybe back to the initial idea. What we try to do for every project is to have an image that we carry on through the whole project, that is representing what is the project about, the idea of the project, the core idea of the project. It's not necessarily the image we communicate to the client, or we use to communicate, or to kind of illustrate the project, but it's an important image for us. And here we use this iconic image of this iconic building, because in a way it's a fake picture, right? It's a picture that you cannot take if you go on this site. The site is not big enough, there are elements, and so he constructed this image using different photography, and he achieved in a way to represent what this building is about, and doing kind of using this authenticity stamp the photography still has. And yeah, this is an absolutely iconic image of an iconic building.
But it's a fake image, I suppose.
But in a sense, in a fake.
Yeah, just to sort I think also relative to our work, what we find is that the creation of images is really important, because often you have an idea of what you want and you try to visualize it yourself. And then as the project progresses, it's almost as if your idea, like little bits of it, start to get kind of broken off, or things get added on, and you end up, I mean, we find we almost end up with two parallel images of our projects. The idea that we felt that we would have, which is almost like a description, an image of what we felt the project would be, and then the reality of the construction of it. So in that way, these images become very important to us, and both stay within our portfolio, as it were, like these two parallel things. So this is context. I jumped. I'm going to talk about our immediate context in Ireland, because this is where we work. I suppose prior to Christoph and I collaborating together, I started working in, I suppose it 2010 maybe, doing small projects, and that kind of grew and grew to resulting in the kind of projects that we get now are often based here. And when Christoph and I started to collaborate together, what's been very interesting is the discussion about how Ireland is, in a certain sense, a little bit fake or inauthentic in its approach to architecture. And this may seem very critical of me, but I'll just explain why. The most iconic architecture in Ireland is still Georgian, Victorian, and Edwardian and Regency architecture. This is an Edwardian building, it's an Edwardian house. These are considered to be the most valuable buildings, like for residential. You know, if you wish to buy a house, the pinnacle of achievement is to buy a house like this. And it's really interesting that, like, this is an imported architecture. It was built by the English when they occupied Ireland, and it is still perceived to be the greatest success. If you study in the architecture universities now, you will often study these buildings, you will study how to convert them, you will study the success of them. But I suppose it also represents maybe a little bit of a lack of confidence that Irish people have in architecture, like we're quite young or kind of new to the game. And often what people want here is something that they've seen before. So this lack of confidence, it's a lack of confidence in their own taste and their history, but also a lack of confidence how they're going to define their own projects or define the future. And they tend, like we see often that architecture here repeats what neighbors have already done, whether they be your neighbor next door, like my neighbor has an extension, I want this, or whether it's that we as a country look to other countries and try to a certain sense, echo sometimes what other countries have done. This isn't with kind of like, you know, I suppose offices such as Grafton Architects would be an exception, but a lot of the other architecture offices in Ireland, I suppose their architecture seems to be very much influenced by what has gone before. An example would be how in the city centre in Dublin at the moment, a lot of the brutalist architecture that existed is now being torn down, and the buildings that are going up are kind of almost slightly classical in nature, which to us is quite interesting. The second thing that's very interesting about the fact that Georgian architecture is so central to, I suppose, Irish perception of what's valuable in architecture is that the buildings themselves were constructed in order to sort of stage power or to transmit status to people passing by. If you look at the image on the left, this is the front of a Georgian building. And the most important level is the piano nobile, which is at the first floor. So you like walk up to this level, and the most important room is set to the front of the house. And typically this would be lit up and you would put all of your finest things in the window where they could be seen. So it's almost like a stage projecting to the street. To the rear of the buildings, they tend to be actually quite functional because the expectation was that nobody would see this. And what's interesting now is that this is being reversed in that people now do not wish to really transmit to the street, but rather in the stage of their own lives to the back of their houses. This is becoming more important. So the back facade, which is coherently constructed around the purpose of function, and has a purely utilitarian composition with no details, no node materials, no symmetry, and just waste pipes and windows. This has somehow now become, I suppose, more important, the more important facade of the building. And this is something that we've kind of explored in some projects recently.
Yeah, and this project is about that. So this is the ground floor, the kind of the ground floor plan of the house you just saw, and we kind of built a pavilion at the back for this client. And the idea was to kind of also use this extension at the back to kind of express the client's, maybe, I don't know exactly, but maybe taste and lifestyle, let's say. And how we did that is that we proposed a kind of a stage or a device that the client can use on a daily basis, basically staging the daily life of the clients. Kind of family theater. We did that by kind of multiplying the possibilities. The client have to open, close, completely open the pavilion, close it, playing with sliding panels, curtains, linking space through outside space, kind of multiplying the possibilities for the client and allowing him to use that as a daily device. So these are a few images that kind of represent that idea of multiplication of possibilities. It is, in a sense, quite authentic, in the sense that the product is what the client does about it. It doesn't represent anything, just a frame to perform. Another product which is quite similar, in the sense it's also at the rear of an existing house. This two pavilions we are building now in Dublin. Here, it's more about recreating a new kind of wall at the back, kind of using the full garden to recreate a new wall, almost kind of separate to the existing house. And so we divided the wall kind of plots, again, using facades that are openable, covered area, double height space, and so on. and just there is an exception, kind of all this kind of framing as a central piece that is an open space in the middle of the project, and kind of defining that very, very strongly. So here again, 3 images kind of trying to show this multiplication of view, of possibilities, and of different uses, and the client can or different things the client can do in these spaces.
I suppose this also comments on the fact that in Ireland, outdoor space is very important to people, but it's a funny approach, because it's very important to people to have an outdoor space. Everyone wants to live in a house with a garden here. There's very few apartments, and it's very difficult to convince people to move from a house to an apartment, even if it would make more sense in that they wouldn't have to commute, or that they would be closer to their peers or closer to their local cafe where they want to go for a drink. People really want to have this outdoor space, and there's like this value to it. And what this project was about also is to kind of accept that and to kind of amplify it, to say that not only is it important, this your house and the space in which that you're going to entertain and live your life, but actually to really accept and to emphasize the value of this outdoor space, which again is kind of a comment on how people live their lives here. So this project actually was the first project that we have done for a developer. So we were approached by a small developer to build 11 houses on a very narrow site, which lies between the river on the left-hand side and the road on the right. It's on the outskirts of a small town called Luca, which is kind of a town outside of Dublin that's become a satellite town. A lot of the shape of the building and the plan internally was defined by the requirements of the planners, but also from the developer. Like, as any of you who've done projects for developer know, like every square millimeter has to be accounted for. So the plan is very simple. It's just a service core and open spaces around it, which are encased by the volume of the building, which is very much defined by what the planners would or wouldn't accept. But what this project became about is a play of facades. So the facades in this building change based on the direction which they face. The facades to the street are actually closed. They are similar to the facades of the Georgian building that we showed you before, where they purely respond to the requirements of the brief on the inside. Very simply rendered in a cheap render plaster, and the windows are very simple. And it is actually at the back of the house where we have this kind of staging or projection of, I suppose, stages wealth and openness to the surrounds, where it actually looks out over a river. And it's here that we have put in, I suppose, more valuable materials and kind of opened the facade up as much as we could and really invested here. This plays quite directly with the game of the houses that we looked at before, in the sense that the object becomes a collage of the facades. And I suppose we could call the facades almost slightly fake, because we're really applying a mask to a very rational plan and using the facades on the exterior to define the interior of the building and how it's used. Yeah, sorry, talking about the next one now. This project is actually a project that's on site at the moment, a very difficult project, I might add, in that it's being built in what's called an architectural conservation area. So it's an area which is a formally planned out Victorian neighbourhood around a formal Victorian garden. So to build a house here is very difficult. And we have to think very carefully about how to approach the project. And what we did was we actually took aspects of Victorian and Georgian architecture and collaged them together in order to make, I suppose, a reinterpretation of what these houses are in a modern sense. So here, the brief is actually the client's own one of these beautiful red brick houses, and they want to move to their back garden into a new house. So what we've created on the first floor is actually their piano nobile. This sits above, in line with the piano nobile of the house elsewhere. So it's kind of raising the client up, so they're still sitting in the same place in society, as it were. And then underneath, the project is actually defined by the garden and the cadastral layout of the neighborhood. So we actually rotated the bedrooms so they look out on the garden, which of course, again, is very important. And instead of, like in a Georgian house, what happens is that you have at the ground floor level, in a rusticated box, you have services. And at the top above the piano nobile, you have bedrooms. And in this case, the bedrooms are pushed underneath at a 90-degree angle. And rather than hiding away the utilitarian elements, we have housed them in a mirrored metal box, which is decorative and sits underneath. Sorry. And it again is all rotated around a small garden space. So the idea here is just to take the parts of the Georgian architecture, which were, I suppose, to a certain sense, important to our clients, and then reorganize the building around these.
Yeah,
That's it.
it took a little bit more, but not too.
Yeah, sorry, that was probably a bit long.
Took 1 or 2 minutes from DENARA.
Long and boring.
Thank you.
No, I think, I mean, I want to underline, you mentioned since the beginning, like the role of references in architecture, and I think it's very nice the way you did. So you brought us around, let's say, references from I mean, context of as a venue and context of references. So like I thank you for showing us the austerity and precision of Adolf Loos, together with a beautiful Greek temple by Vacchini, which is something that is kind of in everyone's repertoire, I would say. And as well, I thank you also for telling us how the iconic it's kind of transferred in rural or more traditional typologies, which is very important. I think when we think immediately to icons, maybe we visualize kind of cathedral, strange things and such, but in fact, I mean, icons could be also a fragment. So thank you for showing us this sash window from the Georgian houses, which is beautiful, and the Georgian houses as well. I mean, it glimpses back to my mind the Henrietta Street one, which is one of the most iconic I've ever seen in Dublin. And so really, we appreciate very much your contribution. And again, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks to you. Thanks.
We hope to see you in Milan if you are going to pass by in September, maybe.
Yeah.
Cool.
We usually come to the salon, but of course no. But yeah, definitely.
Well, I suppose the other side is we have a kind of an interiors office, so we do visit the salon every year. We can. Yeah.
No, it should be possible this year, hopefully. Cross fingers for September.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, okay, now we move, last but not least, to Bureau. So we thank you very much for joining us, Daniel. Daniel Zamarbide, as I hope I pronounce it correctly, Daniel. That's good.
Very well, very well. I'm impressed.
That's good. So Bureau is a project of Daniel together with Karin Pimenta and Gayan Zamarbide. They for us they are very interesting because they experimenting, let's say, various ranges of architecture. So they are really into kind of pieces of furniture, built architecture, installation, editorial projects, design and scenography. So we call them, since we like very much the intuition and the approach, their approach to architecture and all the surroundings of architecture, with this kind of unexpected and surreal manifestation, I would say, which goes really hand by hand with our interest in authentic icons and ironies. So we welcome you very much, Daniel, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's really nice to be with all of you. So I will share my screen up. And let's hit it on. Yeah, the presentation as it is, it's up to, don't go too fast. As it is, basically what I will present, it's very animated and occupied landscape of images. So there will be a lot of images after 5 films. So I have 5 films and 250 images. So that it'll go quite fast. So a full landscape. So the 5 first films refer to the topics that you presented, not necessarily in the right order. And I would like to emphasize that maybe the names or the concepts of fake, authentic, iconic, ironic, and iconic, ironic can be maybe picked up from these 5 small films, which are not images. Sorry, I didn't respect the brief. Well, I mean, we can debate about it, about how much of an image is a film or not. But anyway, so they're very short films of things that we have done, not the first one, as you just already saw, but that are very inspiring, especially the first one for a practice, and that have been, have been around a company or work for a long time. And then there is, as I said, a landscape of images of all types of work. We're very, very close to photography. So the images, even though they are based, let's say, on our work, the photographies that you will see are sometimes a little bit on the side of the work, and they contextualize the work in complex ways, because that's one of the things. If I have a small manifesto, which I wouldn't have, because I think it would be that we embrace complexity, and that's one of the things that we have to really understand, I think, in our contemporary world. Is not to refuse complexity, because it's there. So I will not speak for the first few minutes. So for the first part, which are the films, and then I will bring up some topics actually that have already been touched upon. So there we go. Oh shit. All right, that's the first one. Then the second one. Third. 4th. Oops, sorry. And last one. All right. So those were the movies. So then, as you will see, there will be a series of images that just flow through. So I hope to be not too long. Yeah. So this idea of fake, authentic, iconic. I wanted to relate it first of all, maybe as to the world of image. Christophe and Lucy touched upon that, and I think it's an essential. Kind of like a fake story that we have actually told ourselves as architects, in the sense that, let's say, probably 80% of our culture and everything of what we do is based on images, basically. As much as we like to visit places and the reality of them, most of what we do basically in our computers, and by drawing and by doing collages and everything, but also the culture that we build our work upon is usually based on images. There is, the very famous story of the Barcelona pavilion, which is one of the most iconic, let's say, monuments of the 20th century that literally nobody saw, because it was not so popular at the time, and actually there were very few critics that actually moved to Barcelona in 1929 to see the pavilion and to actually experience it, and even then, I think it even reinforced the idea of an icon that nobody really had seen. So it's a very interesting one. And as I said, we are very close to photography in many sense that presents this complexity of understanding realities, and maybe even more so with digitalization, where you could translate actually the famous title of Walter Benjamin, the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction. If you go into the digital, then so the digital reproduction then is not about what is presented or represented, but it's about what is experienced. So maybe the images today have gained a new status because we live in them, literally. I mean, we literally spend our time in our phones and computers as part of a daily full experience, and not as something that it's representational somehow. So it's not about presenting or representing, but it's about actually experiencing it. So, I mean, if we look at the future, and I'm not the one who's predicting this kind of thing, it will be definitely a mix of realities between what we used to call physical reality and the digital one, and this is very clear, and it's already somehow embedded in our daily lives. And I think it's interesting for us as architects, because actually we've always been between these two worlds, the world of the projected, and that's where as architects we spend most of our time in, projections, basically drawings and images, and the world of the physical reality, which is the things that we eventually build or construct or participate to. So I think in that sense also the ironical thing about and I'm coming back to what Christophe and Lucy were explaining about the images, the ironic thing about the iconic architecture that they were speaking about is that it was actually the new objectivity of the German Düsseldorf school, Thomas Struth, Thomas Ruff, Gursky, Candida Hofer, and so on, that actually were the main representatives of that iconic architecture somehow. And as you very well showed in that Thomas Ruff photograph, all of this was fake. I mean, photographers were very clear with those images that they were not so much interested in the physical building of what they were photographing. And actually, Thomas Ruff, for this Ricolda building, he just sent his interns or whatever assistants just to do the series of pictures, because he was not so much interested in being there and sensing the full physical experience of the site. So I think that's extremely interesting in this context of what is authentic, fake, and with a lot of ironies actually. And once again, I think it's a very interesting moment, because actually also photography started pretty much and evolved with the industrialization. So at the beginning of what we now call the Anthropocene, it's pretty much the same time when photography evolved as a tool, as a device to actually represent some sort of reality. About authenticity, the one thing that came to mind is some readings that I've been doing. Basically, the text of an American historian whose name is William Cronon, who's an environmental historian mainly, but he's a historian first of all. And he has a very interesting take on authenticity. Of course, this is from a historian point of view, and he believes very, very strongly in what he calls himself is storytelling. So whatever the story is, he says, it is authentic. The story itself is authentic, and how this authenticity relates to the real object or the real subject of the story, that's a complex relation. but what he says is that the storytelling is as authentic as the subject of which the story is actually dealing with. So I find also very, very interesting, especially coming from a very well-known historian. I think he was, you know, I think the president of the Academy of Historians in the US. So this is like a big person, and he relates very much to environmental issues that are also so complex, or have been so complex, and are now much more present, that also need the help of storytelling in a very strong way. And there I could also name Donna Haraway in her, you know, and I am very, very close to those purpose and concepts, as you can see in the images, to the idea of storytelling through what she calls string figures. So it's like links and networks of connections that create and evolve in, let's say, lines. It sounds maybe a little bit abstract what I'm saying, but you know, it's all sort of connections that don't have to do with one single reality, but a complexity of them. So it can be, you know, a real story which comes in experience, can come from a text and then evolved in a physical reality, and can become an image, or can become a song, and all of these things are linked in a very strong way. So I really think that that this idea of a string figures, or let's call it lines, is something that connects all of our work as heteroclite as it might look, because it is based on a variety of what I call formats, or let's say, you know, ends or outputs. But I think that the coherence somehow is in this idea. I mean, if there is a coherence, not necessarily because it doesn't have to exist, but it is in the stories that they tell, I guess. And these stories evolve with time. And I guess I am not one of the architects who has created a kind of like an agenda just coming out of school, you know, and has fixed this agenda for his whole life. I guess like most of us, you know, we live in kind of like a complex world, and it has been evolving very, very strongly and rapidly during at least the past 30 years that I've been around or so. I mean, I've been around for much more than that, but I've been at least the 30 years where I have a more of a critical conscience, let's say. So and the 20 that I've been an architect. So I think that for me it's important to kind of like evolve your thinking. You know, if you were, Christoph, you were talking about these icons before of architects, and I completely agree with you. I think that that time is gone, thanks God. Still around, you know, still around. There are people buying architects or products somehow, but I think that the whole perception of architecture is changing. And also as a pedagogue, I think it's also very important that we install this conscience in the future students, or the future architects, sorry, in the sense that whatever they do as a profession, it will not be the same as we are doing, for sure. And they will have to cope with different complexities than the ones that we have been working for. So yeah, the variety of proposals or the formats or outputs that we work on are all linked by this idea of storytelling, and very clearly on opportunities to work with interesting context that can create more stories and make discoveries, and can kind of like nourish us. Because I think one of the most beautiful things of our profession is that every project, you know, comes with its slot, with its you know, amount of discoveries, stories, you know, history, people you meet, and that creates every time creates like kind of like a bubble of cultures that they're all somehow linked, and that's something that I'm really fond of. You know, a project is always an opportunity to discover and get more cultivated, let's say. And yeah, maybe the last point itself, it's so yeah, image authenticity. The last point is actually history, because history also comes with its part of irony somehow. And I don't know, you know, the education of all of you somehow, but I clearly grew up in an education where history was with a big H, you know, and I think that is also being deconstructed now and I see it very positively, especially by you know, the appearance or the more presence that feminism and queer is actually having in our world. It's still very marginal somehow, unfortunately, but I am very curious and open to reread the histories of architecture, specifically, and design and a bit of art, but specifically architecture, where actually, you know, all of them were written by very singular people and in a very particular way. Not to say that all of these people were men, and all of them were white, and we could do a roundtable after this, see how many architectural historian women that, you know, have written the big books that we have all studied in school. We know, and probably there will be not more than 5 if we manage. But that's I mean, as sad as it is, and I think, at least for me, that there's an opportunity now there's an opportunity to revisit the history of architecture, and this is something that we work very much with in all of our projects as well, in the sense that they relate also to different moments of history, and we kind of like dialogue with them. I had a couple more things to say, but I guess I'm gonna shut off since I'm doing my time. Usually you should have a very nice view of the lake. Yeah, there we go, and the sky to finish the presentation. So thank you so much. Yeah, and I hope I brought something to the discussion. Thanks.
Rector would say, and what else? So, no, it was very much inspiring. It was lovely to listen to you, seeing the images scrolling one by one. And I think yes, of course, you reached the point saying, like, why not movies instead of images? And it was, to me, very sharp also the fact that all the 5 movies, in fact, contains all the 5 words together. So thank you for sharing this first part. And then for once again underlining the importance of images in architecture. So in fact, I mean, when looking at the screen and seeing your projects, I was wondering what is real and what is not real. I mean, what is built and what is not built, and which are his projects and which are kind of references that he brought out from some travels and such. And I think that was brilliant. So again, we thank you for concluding this session. And yeah, I think that's
a pleasure.
That's all for today. We formally invite you guys for the 7th session, which is going to happen on Monday, and we will be pleased to host Stan van Zakken, Theo de Meijer, and Stefanie Everard from Belgium, Davide Tommaso Ferrando from Italy, and Johansen Skotsved from Denmark as a 3rd guest. So we wish to see you on this screen in one weekend, and we wish you a nice lunch, and thank you again all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Ciao. Ciao.